let's start at the beginning. You'll buy your bees. They'll come either a 3-pound package of bees, or you can buy what's called a nucleus, which is a small hive already established with the queen, eggs, her own bees, a basic small 5-frame hive. They come 5 frames, sometimes 3. 5 frames, 5 of these, and already producing hives. I buy these. What it is a 3-pound package of bees. Comes with a feeding can that the bees feed while they're in here, and a queen, which comes in a little box. The queen comes in a little box, is in the top, comes with about 10,000 bees, which is about 3 pounds, and a feeder. What you do is when you get your bees home, you'll pop the feeder out, with a little piece of paper, pop the feeder out, and you watch videos on YouTube. A lot of people will take the bees and dump them in. Thousands of bees. It upsets the bees. I don't do that. What I'll do is with my first box that we've just set up, I'll take 4 frames out, and I'll just put this box in there. Cover it back up. After a couple of days, those bees will come out. Install the box. You want to take your little queen. She's in here. Make sure she's alive. Some come marked. Some don't come marked. Depends on how much you want to pay for it. And you'll take that queen box and just stick between the frames. There's a little sugar plug on the top. Break that plug. Just between the frames. Install your box of bees. Cover it up and leave them. The bees will eat the sugar, release the queen. She will come out, and she will be their queen, hopefully. That's how it's supposed to work. That's how it generally works. If you get your bees installed, after about a week, you want to go into your hive. You buy some basic tools. Out of all the tools I own, all the bee stuff I have, this is the one thing that goes with me everywhere. It's got a scraper for scraping, comb, and whatnot off your frames, and it's got a hook. When you go into your hive, the bees glue everything. So when you go into your hive, you'll take your tool, get a little hook, hook it into the frame and lift it. You'll have to crack the frames because they'll be sealed. Lift it, and then out comes your frame. This is the one tool that everybody can use. It goes everywhere. Nail and gloves, very important. Sometimes I wear them, sometimes I don't. I don't mind getting stung. Sometimes the bees sting, sometimes they don't. It depends. Okay, your first inspection, you've looked, you've seen the queen. Sometimes I don't see the queen. When you pull your frames out, what you want to see is, notice the color of the frame. Even though this is a square box, there's a round hive in the center. This is where they lay all their eggs. So what you'll see is you'll either see little white dots will be your eggs, or you'll see capped brood. You don't have any with capped brood. You'll see the brown caps. When you do an inspection, if you can't find your queen, I don't like to look really for my queens that often because I don't like to rip the hive apart to try and find them. If you don't find your queen, what you're looking for is you're looking for eggs, larvae, baby bees, or capped brood. If you see eggs, then you know your queen is around, as she lays about 1,000 eggs a day. Lay.
If you get a queen that's unmarked, can you mark it yourself before you throw it in, just to keep it like a little more identifiable? Or?
I guess you could. I never thought of it really. I don't know what they mark them with, like a type of egg. Like I said, everybody has their own ways of doing things. For me, I'm not that nervous about not seeing the queen as long as I see signs that it's a healthy, active hive. You can tell she's been there. You can tell, number one, by eggs. If you see eggs, then you know she's been there within a day or so. You know, and the queen will lay about 1,000 eggs a day. So, you know, as she moves out throughout that hive. Queens do fly. You know, sometimes the bees, if it's not a good queen, the bees will destroy the queen. This is called a queen cell. I don't want to get out of line, but while we're talking about queen, it's called a queen cell. This hive either swarmed at one point, or the queen died, and they tried to produce a new queen. I think this hive is at Sunny Meadow Farm. This hive swarmed out. Yeah, this hive swarmed out. So what they did was, I don't want to get out of track, but as this hive grows, and you get your second super on now, you've got that double hive. The hive will double. You could have, 60, 70,000 bees in this hive in August. When the hive gets to a certain point, the queen will lay. The queen will instruct the worker bees to build cells, a queen cell, which is that. The worker bees will build that, and that's a larger cell to hold a larger bee, which is a queen. So, I think this hive swarmed. If it didn't swarm, then something happened to the queen, and they produced a new queen. Like I said, my queens, I don't always look for the queens because I don't like to rip the whole hive apart trying to find it, When you go into the hive, everything's sealed. They use propolis. They glue the whole hive. Once you break into that and you break comb and you pull that, it really disrupts the bees. We try not to go into it that often. I'll go into my hives maybe in the early spring. Once you install, you want to go in after a couple of days. You want to make sure the queen is released from the box first off. If she hasn't been released from there, then you take a little pin, plug that little thing, help the bees out a little bit. The bees won't always accept a new queen. I've never had a hive where they didn't accept a new queen. I've never had a hive. They do not accept all new queens if it's not their queen. I've never had a hive that's done that, but I've heard that it does happen. I'm getting off track.
Sorry about that.
I'm getting off track. That's okay. So back to your box. You'll have your second super on there. That'll be your hive. As the top box fills with eggs and larvae, those bees will hatch out, fly out. The queen will eventually go back down into the bottom box, start to refill the bottom box. At that time, the worker bees, will start to fill the top box with honey. That's going to be their winter stores. So, in the late fall, the bees will go back downstairs. You break into your hive, you'll notice that that top box should be mostly honey. Should be, in wintertime, 70 or 80 pounds of honey in that top box. The bees will need, I leave mine at least 7 full frames for the winter, for them to go for the winter. And I also feed them, which we'll talk about after. They'll start to fill that top box with honey. That's going to be their stores for the winter. When that box fills is when you're allowed to put your next box up on top, which will be a shallow, which will be frames like this, a smaller frame. All that honey that gets into that shallow at the top will be yours to take if you want. If not, you feed it back to the bees. Some people leave it for the bees. I take it. It's mine. And that will be that third box. So when late fall comes, what I'll do is I'll go and I'll pull all my honey supers off. All those shallows come off. And that's whatever honey. If I notice at that time that the hives are short honey, like I don't think they have enough for the winter, then I'll put what's called fondant, cake fondant, frosting. And I'll put fondant in those hives for the winter. Try not to check them in the winter because I don't like to go into them in the winter. And then in the early spring, if they've gone through all their honey over the winter, then in the early spring they have a sugar substitute in there to get them till that time. Then when the spring comes, we'll feed them, and I'll explain to you when spring feeding comes. So now the bees have gone back down here for the winter. The queen, all your summer bees will die. The queen will lay a new round of winter bees that will last through the winter, however long that winter is. Those bees should make it through that winter. These days it's real hard to keep the bees through the winter. You don't know why. This hive at my house died very early winter, like late fall, with full racks of honey, and they didn't eat any of their honey. They didn't eat any of the food. They died in about a 2-week span. Probably about 30,000 bees circle the bottom of the box. That's what's happening to bees. I don't know why. I personally think it's something in the honey. That's what I think. I think it's from genetically modified pollen and flowers and insecticides. They're not eating the honey. So they ate some of the fondant. They did not eat the honey. They died in about a 2-week span. It's happened a lot. It's happened a lot this year. I think 60% of people lost bees this winter. My bee mentor Nancy lost 14 hives in the early fall. So they never made it through the winter this year.
Right.
So,
I have a beekeeper, he keeps 3 hives of mine, and they all died.
yeah,
In the fall.
it's a hard thing. We don't know why. I know my bees, and I know my bees ate no honey at all. And that was, I think my wife noticed this hive in, it was like November. It was early, very early. And it was probably about a 2-week span. Just a ball, queen in the middle on the bottom. That being said, we're still going to try, and we're going to buy bees every year, and we're going to try and keep them alive. Like I said, I personally think it's the honey, because nothing got eaten.
But how can we change that?
Hey, Steve, you speak up, Mr. Hare?
No. So, the bees are dying. We'll leave it at that. We're not sure why, whether it's, I had no issues with parasites or anything really this year with all the issues that bees can have. I had no issues with anything this year. I treated like I usually do, and they just died off. So that being said, wintertime, bees go back down on the bottom, circle the queen. They'll keep the queen at about 90 degrees all winter long. They flap their wings. They move around the hive and eat the honey throughout the winter, usually ending up at the top. Springtime comes, those winter bees start to die off, and the queen will lay around of new spring bees. About 1,000 a day she'll lay, and they hatch like crazy. As the summer goes on, if you can keep them over that winter, that following year will be a year that you'll keep your eyes out for swarming, because now you've got a real strong spring hive, and they will swarm that second year. You can try and catch a swarm. You can let them swarm off. As a beekeeper, they're your bees. They're my bees. I would like to keep that swarm. So you can buy yourself a small nuke box. You set them up. You can try and catch that swarm and that queen. You get a free hive. They say you should start off with 2 hives when you start to compare the 2 as the season goes on. I started with 1 hive, and I never had that issue. It's kind of expensive to run a couple of hives. Not a lot of work, but it can be expensive. Okay. Any questions? Kind of all over the place? No? All right. So wintertime comes. Bees are on the bottom, around the queen. We're going to feed them fondant, which I'll explain to you as we go on. For the winter, if you take the honey, you've got to give them some kind of substitute. And not much more. A bee lives about 2-3 weeks throughout the summer. Starts its life, hatches out, starts its life cleaning its cell, cleans its own cell, then becomes a cleaner bee. Will clean inside the hive. As the bee ages, all bees go through stages. It goes from a cleaner all the way up to a flyer. The last stage of a bee's life is a flyer, where they fly and collect honey. They could fly 5 miles a day for honey. If a bee finds a good honey score, they'll come back, notify the hive. The bees will swarm to that. They'll collect that honey. Your winter bees will last throughout the winter, basically, however long they have to in that hive, however months it is. And that's your basic hive. There's not really a lot to it. The bees do their own thing. You let them do their own thing, and, they should be fine. We help them a little bit, but you try not to break into that hive too much and disrupt the bees. They will get mad. That's about it. Your basic tools: get a scraper and a hook. Like I said, for scraping, that's propolis, bee glue. They'll glue this whole hive. They'll glue the frames. They build weird comb like that. I don't know what they were doing. They, people go crazy. Some bee people go crazy. I don't. I let the bees do what they do. If there's comb where it doesn't belong, you just scrape it and pop it off. You melt it down into wax. My wife uses this for hand cream. She makes lip balm. It's antiseptic, it's antibacterial, it's antiviral, antifungal. It is very good for you, as is the honey. Your smoker. Bees communicate by pheromones. So when you come out to your yard and you want to do an inspection on your bees, as soon as you walk up to this hive, your guard bees in the front notify that whole hive. Within seconds, that whole hive knows you're there. Now, as long as you're not doing anything, they will not bother you because you're not doing anything. We use smoke to interrupt the pheromones. You can buy all kinds of stuff from bee places to put in your smoker, from artificial stuff to burlap. I put leaves, grass, hay. We have rabbits, we have chickens. I put hay. If I'm going to do a bunch of hives at once, if I'm going to do 4 hives at once, I'll put something that I like cherry wood or apple wood, because it smells nice. But yeah, wood chips, you don't have to buy anything special to put in your smoker. Anything, you know, that'll smolder in there, any type of wood, leaves, twigs, it really doesn't matter as long as you can get a puff of smoke. So, to come to inspect your hive, we'll light your smoker. It should smoke on its own. It breathes through a little hole in the back. When you come to your hive, the first thing you want to do is you want to give a little smoke in the front where the door is. Your bees will come in and out of here. You put a little smoke into there. What I do is I'll smoke that. That smokes out the guard bees and confuses them. I take your hive tool, pop the top, and I give a little smoke on the top. I close it and I'll let it sit for a couple of seconds. You'll notice that the hive is buzzing. They think there's a fire. I think what they do is they eat honey, is what happens in there. Whatever they're doing in there, it messes up the pheromones. That's what allows me to go into the hive. Some days I can go in it like this. I mean, I've been in it in shorts and sandals and tank top, and the bees have been fine. This past fall, went out to feed my bees by my shed, and they seemed to be kind of quiet, so no suit or anything. I think I might have put my hood on. I gave a little smoke. As soon as I popped that cap, they came out. Got stung in the forehead and the neck. Just like anybody, my glasses off, run away, smoke flying through the air. I don't know what it was. The bees just didn't want me in there that day. The next day, I popped it like nothing. No, nothing, no, nothing. So whether something maybe that night was at them, who knows? I don't know. They were pissed. But like I said, you just stop, close up, walk away. That's all. You know, if you're going to have bees, you're going to get stung. It's just a thing. It does not bother you after a while as much as it does at first. I mean, I get stung constantly. It really, you know, if you, the biggest mistake most people make is when those bees come out and you start waving your arms, you're going to get stung. When the bees come out, what you need to do is just kind of walk away. Just walk away. Sometimes they'll follow you. It depends on the hive. I had 2 different kinds of bees this past year. I had Italian bees and I had Russian bees. The Russian bees were not as dormant, per se, as the Italian bees. The Russian bees were kind of mean. I'm kind of glad I don't have that hive anymore. But they just from day one, they would not let me in the hive from day one, which is odd for honeybees, because honeybees are generally docile. I don't know if it was because they were Russians or because it was just an odd thing. I don't know. That hive just, I mean, you can ask my wife. I'd come home and I'd be like, oh, they wouldn't let me in. They just would not let me in. That being said, they got mice in them this past year. I didn't put the mice guards in. They got a big, huge mouse nest in there, and I think they evacuated. But I really didn't care because they were extremely, this was out of that hive, they were extremely productive. The Russian bees are very productive when it comes to making honey. They make thick, heavy, really beautiful honey, but I don't think I'll have those anymore because I just couldn't work them like my other bees.
Do you think your bees know you?
No, I don't think so, but It's all in how you enter that hive. You know, if you come out and you're nervous, first and foremost, you can't be nervous. If you're nervous and you bumble through, you're going to get stung. I do believe, like it's weird, but I do believe you can be one of the bees. Even it sounds real odd, but you really can. When I go out to my hives, you really, I mean, even my wife will come out. You know, you can stand there with bees buzzing all around and you won't get stung.
See, I feel like they know me.
Not so much they know you as, I don't know.
Because I can be pulling weeds around the hive. And
Yeah, I mow my hive, I mow
they're
my
just
lawn
out there,
in
like
front.
you say, what you doing?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
they
tell
will.
them it's just me.
Honeybees, a honeybee will not come out to sting you unless you're messing around and you're being goofy. They will sting you. But for me to stand in front of my hive and have hundreds of bees buzz by, they didn't come out to sting you, per se, you know. Bees, they're doing their own thing. By me standing next to my hive, as long as I'm not jamming my hands in it and being obnoxious, they're not going to sting you. They don't like extracting honey, and I'll explain an easier way to get the honey, but you know, the worst time for the bees is in the fall, coming into the winter. They're very protective of their honey and any of those winter larvae and brood that might be in there that haven't hatched out. So in the fall time, you will notice that they're a little more aggressive than during the hot days of summer. I always enter my hives in the hot days. Middle of the day, 80% of the bees are out. It's a better time to go into the hive. If you try to go into the hive in the evening, they don't like it. You could have another 30,000 bees in this hive at 7 o'clock at night than you would at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So you always break into them during the day. And like I said, if I go into my hives maybe once during the summer every other month, unless I notice an issue. I look at them constantly. You know, I'll look at them daily, my bees in my backyard. We sit and watch the bees, you know, we watch the bees. But throughout the summer, maybe once every 2 months I might go into them. Unless I notice, I'll show you a few signs. You can tell from the bees going in and out of the hive kind of what's going on in there, and just by how the bees themselves smoker. Is there any questions? Any like kind of ramble?
Did you notice your bees not eat so much this year?
My bees didn't eat anything.
No. Like, usually the 3 hives are all over my flowers. All
Yeah.
over them. This year, no. And this year they didn't survive. And all 3
Did they-
hives died.
Did they die with honey? Was there honey
I
in
don't
the
know.
supers?
They're not my hives. The beekeeper just keeps them there.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
just watch them.
yeah.
But I noticed, you know, on my grape hyacinths, there's usually hundreds of them. They didn't even bother with them this year.
All my hives were very productive this year. One wasn't. I had one hive that I had bought, one box that I had bought, was the same as all the other ones when I installed it, but I noticed when I went back for my first inspection that first week to inspect the queen, I found the queen and stuff, but I noticed that there was dead bees on the outside of the box, of the hive itself on the stoop. And that hive there never really recovered throughout the summer. I don't know if it was just it could have been the queen herself, you know, it was just a weak hive. It actually, I believe that hive actually at one point, the queen died out of that hive and it swarmed and it like merged with the hive that was next to it. Because one went from, you know, I had a strong one and a weak one. The weak one died within a week and that strong one almost doubled in its size. That was actually this one. This was a very strong hive going into late summer. I treated for mites and all my treatments, but like I said, it just within probably a 2-week span, that hive just died. So, equipment.
Steve.
Yes, you said this is expensive to get started. Can you give us a...
I think my first hive whole setup, I think was about $400, everything. I bought a lot of stuff I didn't need. You know, you learn as you go on, and there's stuff that you buy that you don't need, that I didn't like, and I didn't want to use, and I try stuff myself. But I think, I don't know how much they are. I think a box of bees like this could be anywhere from $120 to $150, depending on where you buy them. They're not really expensive per se as a hobby. I mean, I have more expensive hobbies, but it's not really, the initial setup, you know, once you get your initial setup, if you can keep your bees, it's just a matter of jars for your honey, basically, to put your honey in. If you can't keep your bees, then, if you have bees this year, you lose your bees over winter, you want to try again next year, all you really got to do is buy the bees. And they've been the same price for as long as I can remember. Maybe 10 years. They've been like $120. They just, this past year, I think with the whole bee thing going on, they've gone up a little bit, and I think that's just kind of a jab, because they know a lot more people are going to want to do bees. A box of bees, 3-pound box, about 10,000 bees with a queen, is about 120 or 150. A nuke box, which you can buy, which is a small hive, established with a queen brood, a little bit of honey for that. It's already an established hive. That, maybe $2.25, I think, to buy that. Last nuke I bought was out of a place in Billerica. I think they're called Merrimack Aviaries.
Yeah, they're $160.
Are they?
Yeah.
A little bit more. I buy the boxes because my friend Nancy sells the boxes, but I would prefer nukes because I would prefer to, you start from scratch with a box. With a nuke, all you're actually doing is you're pulling your 5 frames out and you're installing them into here. So you're already installing an established hive into your box. It already has a queen with her own workers, her own larva, and her own cap brood. I find that to be a little better, maybe a little easier for a beginner, because like I said, all you're doing is installing an established hive into your box to grow. That's all you're doing. And it's a lot easier. They're a lot easier to take care of because it's already established. My friend Nancy doesn't sell nukes. She gets mad if I buy them. I buy the boxes, and I do. She'll sell 400 or 500 of these this year. You order your bees over the winter. Most of them come from Georgia. They come from farms, almost like you can almost think of it as like cattle. They're bred, they're marked. I think the queens are probably artificially inseminated. The queens come already. A queen will mate once for its whole life. It'll mate once. It'll lay 1,000 eggs a day. I think I've had a queen maybe 2 years, the longest. It just depends on what you buy and where you buy them. I have a lot of luck with my friend Nancy Bees. She drives to Georgia. They order them, they buy them, they bring them back. And she's very knowledgeable. Everybody should have a bee mentor, somebody who you can talk to when you have issues. Okay? Veil, gloves. Veil is very good. Bees are attracted to what comes out of your breath. So they will fly around your face. They get in my beard. They'll go for your ears. They go for your face. Veil's very important if you don't want to get stung on the face. Forehead's not bad. The neck hurts real bad, kind of. Veil, I almost always wear my veil. Not always, depending on the bees. I always wear gloves. It's just sticky and dirty, everything gets sticky. Protect your arms and your hands. That's all I really wear. I don't wear a bee suit. It's all on what you're comfortable with. You want to wear a bee suit? By all means, buy a bee suit. If that's what makes you comfortable, that's what makes the bees comfortable. If you're in the beehive and you're not comfortable, the bees are going to sting you. Any questions? Anything else?
What about like bears and wild animals?
What I had in my hive was this past year I had a big mouse nest in one of them. We put wire. What I generally do is in the fall I put hardware cloth, which is that wire, across the front. It keeps the mice from getting into the hive. One of the ones had a massive mouse nest. I didn't check it for probably a couple of months. Went up there in the fall. Me and my wife opened the thing up, and the bees were gone. The comb was all destroyed, and the mice were running out of it. It was my fault. I didn't put, especially at the farm. At my house, I've had what I was told was shrews. I've never seen a shrew. I don't even know what it is. But they come at night, and they stick their little fingers in the front, and as soon as they scratch at that, the guard bees will come out. So I've come out in front of my hives and seen hundreds of half-eaten bees. I was told they're shrews. I think it's a type of little mouse thing. All your hives should be at least 3 feet off the ground. What that does